We are now live. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 22nd Litchfield School Board meeting. The time is now 5:36. We're running a few minutes late due to sorting out some technical difficulties. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we do have remote participation this evening. Vice Chair Ames is remote. With that, I do want to entertain a motion to allow remote participation this evening, but before doing so, Ms. Ames, if you could just state the reason why you're remote this evening and if anybody's with you.
Sure.
I'm here with the dog. I'm by myself and I have COVID.
All right, well, we hope you feel better soon and wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to allow remote participation.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Thank you. Any additional discussion? I'll call the vote, please. Roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I am an aye. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 4-0. All voting this evening will be done through roll call from this point forward. All right. With that, we'll move into review and revision of agenda. I know, obviously, we met just last week, so this week is largely focused on a facilities update, and we have on-site insight starting this evening. But any changes to tonight's agenda?
No.
Okay, we have consent. Any board members like to move anything off of consent tonight?
No, I just wanted to note that we didn't have a curriculum committee meeting today, so the notes are updated.
Great, thank you for that. Check that out. All right, excellent. Moving into summary of non-public actions from January 15th, 2024. Ms. Ames motion to approve the December 18th, 2024 meeting minutes. Mr. Shoemaker seconded that motion. That motion passed 5-0. Tonight we have presentations and recognitions, again, as mentioned. We have on-site insight, and this is largely focused on a facilities update this evening. We have several members from our Facilities Improvement Committee tonight. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to the superintendent to get things kicked off.
Yeah, so we have Tina Cardosa here this evening. She's from On-Site Insight. She's the one who completed the reports for us. We got them in December. I feel like we did the walkthrough back in November, though, at this point.
Beginning of November.
It flies by time and doesn't all at the same time. So we had a few questions come in from a couple of people, so Tina has those questions and is ready to answer them. The board has the hard copies of reports in front of them. I'm going to project up here on the screen each one as we go, so if we need to reference a specific page, we can. And here we go, share that tab. I'll make it a little bit bigger to see. Okay, a little bit bigger. There we go. And so we'll start with just Campbell High School because it's the first one. I don't know how we want to go about this 100%. So, you know, the work that On-Site Insight does, as we've talked about a few different times, is they come in, they do an assessment of literally your capital needs. So they're looking at how the condition is of the building. They're trying to help you project what your needs are going to be over the next, 20 years in terms of capital needs. For example, like if you're going to need a new roof, an HVAC system, those type of bigger projects, and also some smaller things as well. So we had this done for all three schools so we can work towards, I know the immediate focus is on GMS for a lot of what we're doing, but from a district standpoint, we want to do long-term planning and figure out our budgeting, and this part of the warrant article that we have up, of putting money away and stuff, so we can start doing these kind of bigger projects in an efficient way. So we're starting with the high school here only because I just started with the high school. There's no magic reason. Tina put together a nice 20-year plan. The high school is about 25 years old. Celebrated its 25th anniversary this year, so it's up. It's starting to be up for a lot of bigger things. So I don't know if if we want to just do question and answer. If you want, how we want to go about this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just a summary from each building, and maybe we can turn it over to Tina for maybe some highlights for each building.
Sure. So I have a little cheat sheet here of each building. So your high school like Brian said, it is 25 years old. And 25 in building industry is the magic number, 20 to 25. So surprisingly, probably to a lot of people, the cost per square foot, projected cost per square foot for the 20-year total for the high school is pretty high. It's about $116 per square foot for the next 20 years. However, we look at 20 years, but we really tell clients to focus on the first 5, because beyond 5, you can estimate, but you never really know as far as costs go, as far as interest rates, all of that. So your first 5-year projections at the high school total about 4.1 million. It's because of the age of the building and systems are just aging out. You did a big asphalt resurfacing of the student lot, but the rest of the asphalt's original. That's a big expense that I have in year 2. The boilers, the energy management system, all of that is original. The rooftop units, the roof itself is original, and that's a large expense. So I should back up a little bit too. What I do and what we do as a firm is we look at life cycle of all components. But then I also look at projects. So the high school has a large amount of rooftop units. So you wouldn't go up on the roof one year and replace all those rooftop units and then the following year do the roof. So some of those rooftop units may last an extra 2 or 3 years, but it just doesn't make sense to not do them at the same time. So when you look through the report, I try to line things up so that you're doing projects rather than some of the stuff. It may seem premature, but I think in the long run, it benefits you. So the high school especially, the rooftop units, you do the roof. And then the exterior projects, you can tend to move those over a couple of years, but if you're gonna do exterior masonry repairs, you do the caulking, and sometimes here you're not gonna have to do the windows. When we get to the elementary school, we'll talk about that, but the windows, the doors, and things like that. So at the high school overall, it's about 57% of the costs for the building, so which means exterior, interior finishes. 18%, I'm sorry, for the mechanical systems, and about 25% for the site features, the high school. Anybody has any questions specific about the high school? We can.
Now, in this report, just to help people along who don't necessarily have it in front of them right this second, who might be watching from home or later on or something. So you map out in the 20 years, like a rough estimate of when these things should be done. So like in the high school, for example, that roof is probably, and roof units is one of the first things you mentioned here that should be done at the high school, grouped together, and then from there, that sequencing. So this is kind of a, for people who are here in the room or at home, we have a whole 20-year map that shows the pricing estimates of these things and grouped together on when we should do these different things.
You want to go to page 44?
Yeah.
I can just show.
Yeah, this is where I was pointing at, yep.
Yeah. So in the world of capital planning, we break down each facility in categories. So this first page shows you the site category, and all the things would be parking lot, track, lighting, sheds, all of that stuff. If you go to the top line, it's kind of hard to see far away, but each element has a line item. So the first line on site is the roadways, parking. Then there's a quantity. So I had stacks of drawings of your facilities at my house. And so those were taken right off of your blueprints. So the quantity, and then the next column is a cost. So it would be, for this, it would be either a resurfacing cost or like seal coat restriping. Then total cost. Total cost is in $25. The next column is your age. The next is expected useful life. So currently, the majority of the parking there is 26 years old. Expected useful life is 30. So year 4, you would have costs to replace. If you go down to page 45, the next line, the top, you can see that in year 4, those dollars are dropped in, but they're also increased by 3% annually. So we have an inflation factor of 3%. So the total cost on the previous page was 405, but in year 4, it's 442. So the other thing I want to mention is Brian and I talked about this when we did these, and we didn't put any cost in year 1 because of the way your warrant articles and things are written. So because we did that, automatically all the costs are increased in the plan, because year 1 in the plan is showing as 2025, but you don't have any costs. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, and then there's some items that'll say in 1 year or over 19 years. When it says over 19 years, it's like an annual allowance for things. So the costs are spread out. And then there's some notes to try to explain that for everybody on the last column. Does anybody have any questions about the way the format is? Okay. So, like I said, we break down every facility into categories. The first is the site, and then the next category is the mechanicals, which is boiler room systems. Think of like boilers, heating boilers, domestic hot water boilers. The next section would be building mechanical, which is the systems, distribution piping, electrical systems, elevators, fire alarm systems. Then the building exterior, which would be doors, the facade, windows, roofs, and then all your interior spaces. Interior spaces start at page 52. We start with the halls, the stairwells, and then the high school has the SAU offices. And then admin, classrooms, auditorium. I tried to break it down as much as I could, so that you could see what the cost, if you wanted to, like what your total auditorium expense would be, you could calculate that. There's a couple graphs at the beginning of the report. Page, let's see here, of the high school, it's page 38. It's a capital needs summary. So this is a graph form, all your costs for the next 20 years. And you can see the 4 categories on the left: site, mechanical room, building, mechanical, and architectural. Year 1 is blank down below, but this gives you a pretty good idea. As expected, architecture is usually where most of your costs are. And then below that, the next page, page 39, is the totals per year.
Year 14, it spikes because of systems, and at that point, it would be 40 years old.
Let's see here.
Yeah. So that would be like the next window of stuff. Like 30 years is like a 25, 30-year window. You get some more stuff to that 40-year window, so that would be another spike where you would see stuff increase. If you were to like follow this religiously, right? Like we know we're not this fall building or putting a new roof on CHS. We don't have that funding right now to do that type of thing. So, but like if the idea is, yes, you do this in like those waves, you know, you build back up, you know, you do your initial big project. Like if we were able to get the money for the roof units and the roof and everything in, 4 or 5 years, then empty that kind of reserve fund, build that back up. So when another big project's up and another, I don't know if we want to wait 10 years, we can see where we're at that point, like the building and everything. But you build it back up, take the money out, take care of that stuff, and then start that cycle all over again.
So the one I added a reserve plan in here for you. I know you don't have a dedicated replacement reserve.
We do have a reserve, there's just not that money
Not
in it.
that,
You
right.
put in
So,
there.
pages 41, 42, and 43 is just one go at an analysis that'll show you what you actually need to fund just this high school. They're not combined, the schools. So if you look at page 41, it says starting balance of 5,250,000 with annual deposit of $2.50 per gross square foot. One number I threw in there just to show you if you want to start funding your reserve to fund all the needs projected in this plan, what does that number look like? So I did that for every school.
And that's what the basis of having that money in year one to put in there, right? So, you know, if we were sitting on this amount of money, then at warrant articles of about 285 a year, that's what that's representing. But we do need to build some of this reserve first before we can get to that more consistent number.
It's important to also remember that this is just a planning tool.
Yeah.
That none of this is set in stone, and I can't predict, you know, next week you may have a hot water tank blow and it totally blows this, you know, so that's important to remember. And it's also important to remember that the interior of the rooms and finishes and things, you know, of course it'd be nice to replace the floor every 20 years, but realistically, you know, we know that that might not happen, but you do have to plan for it because it's not going to last 100. So it's to put it out there.
I guess I don't understand this slide, right? And when I look at this slide, I'm interpreting this slide just looking at the visual. And I understand kind of the wording down below, but the visual tells me I need to be putting away $2.5 million a year just for Campbell High School.
Correct.
That's correct. But the description down below says annual contributions starting at $285,000 with an initial deposit of 5.2. So how do I balance the two? I put an initial deposit of 5.2 and then it's 285, or I at least put $2.5 million in a year.
No, it's not 2.5 million. I'm sorry. It's 285,000 a year, increased at 3% annually.
Right, but if I look at just the graph, right, kind of the baseline over the next 13 years, the low point over the next 13, 14 years is $2.5 million.
Is that the running balance of what you have?
No,
to have?
this is this isn't your needs. This is looking at the replacement reserve balance. So that's the balance in the account.
So we have to get to that and then maintain that.
You could.
So that's not the
I'm not
needs.
saying we are.
Well, that's the
Like,
suggestion.
It's a
Is
suggestion, right? Like, I think it's and I don't want to step on toes here, like a huge pie in the sky, right? Like if we
Right.
were hand over fist over money, yeah, we would want millions in reserve in
Right.
terms of building stuff, right? In
well,
case
and
something
also
happens.
this is factoring in not bonding anything, right? Like
Correct.
So this is if we were to try to pay for everything out of pocket,
Right.
and we know that financially that's probably not possible. So we are going to have to dig into this and try to figure out what the balance is for us on how much we want to pay out of pocket versus how much we want to bond. I have a question for you. When we talk about replacement costs, we're talking about like-kind equipment, right?
Oh,
So it's
sorry.
not-
Yeah, there were a couple questions about that. Yeah.
Oh, it seemed like an opportune time to.
Yeah,
I know
go ahead.
Dan DeWitt can't be with us tonight
Yeah.
because he's got the flu and strep. So, so he wanted us to
Yeah.
ask a few questions.
Yes. So, replacement in our plan is in kind, unless there was something specific, flooring, for example, like this room has carpet. Unless, throughout the district, you said we're taking carpet out because of allergies, we're putting in vinyl plank or whatever, then I would incorporate that. But everything else is in kind. We don't carry upgrades. I know that, like, not so much the high school, but the other schools, you could probably upgrade your boiler system to more efficient systems. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a mechanical engineer. We replace in kind. And you'll see in some of the other schools that I've carried allowances for, engineering services or that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a lot easier and more accurate if you do inline, and then you can go from there.
So I was able to do the walkthrough with you at GMS. I wasn't able to make the other two schools. So I know we're going to get to GMS, but since we're on the in-kind discussion, when we were in the like the boiler room, there was a boiler like attached to the ceiling, and you said you can't take that down. You would have to just decommission that and put one on the top of the roof. So when we talk about in-kind, that would be a scenario where you would have been quoting something going on top of the roof, right?
Probably.
Okay.
Or not so much on the roof, but an engineering service, because you could also put because I don't know if your roof could hold it.
Sure. Okay.
So that would be something where you'd have to have an extra engineering fee on top of your replacement.
Gotcha. Okay.
That school, I did carry extra for electrical upgrades as well. So an electrical engineer to come in and look at your electrical systems, your distribution systems. The older buildings
it was only for the purpose of understanding what in-kind. That was the only reason I
Yeah.
brought that up.
And there was one other question about, does lighting replacement include updating to LED? So the only lighting I've carried in the plans are the gymnasium lights at one of the schools. The middle school has already been upgraded, and the high school is pretty well LED. So I don't.
We just replaced all the LEDs.
Yeah, so there really isn't a whole lot of lighting upgrade or lighting replacement in the plan, so I don't know what that was specific for. I think that was it as far as questions.
Okay. Pretty eye-opening at the end.
Does the FIC, are we allowing the FIC to ask questions?
I would love to, yeah. I want this meeting to be very collaborative. So if the FIC has questions, please, by all means. Mr. Oblinus.
Tina, nice to have you with us. Ronald Linus. Thank you. So just for my own edification, I did a little spreadsheet, putting them all together. And I did send it out, so I don't know if people looked at it, but staying on Campbell High School, the total comes up to $13,200,000. And it front loads, and that it kind of splits about half in each 10-year period. As Andrew mentioned, you see an uptick in the second half around 14 to 15. So essentially, if we were going to do this kind of on the schedule, we need a big upfront cost for both Campbell, and then we'd have a maintenance till year 10 or thereabouts, and then have another jump up that would require maybe a second bond, just kind of talking out loud. But just looking at the cash flow, it starts out the first year, 2 million, then 300,000, then at year 4 we have 1.4. So when you add that all together, that's kind of like a 5 million over the first couple of years. So that's certainly more than we could take out of pocket, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I think somebody talked about bonds. So to me, that saying you need to come up with a bond to begin with to get you started, and then decide how much you want to bond of, let's say, the first 10 years. You want to bond 5 million and then try to cover the rest of it toward the end with others. Is that kind of how that flow of expenditures looks like to you?
Well, the good thing about my report and the good thing about what I do is I don't have to decide how it's funded.
Good thing for you.
So I just I do the report and put everything in the report that I think your buildings need, and then sort of hand it off and say, but I guess, if you're going to bond everything, then that it's ultimately not my decision. And again, it's not that you're absolutely stuck to this plan either.
I understand.
So,
I guess my point, and I think it's going back to what Andrew was asking, is your assumption shows a big inflow of cash at year 1. So it starts out at a reserve of 5 million, I think, according to that, for the chart there. So that's got to be either you have it in the bank already, or we have to,
But here's the
Come up with
reality,
that.
I mean, we're all hearing about a police station, just putting it in reality, right? And they're
Yeah.
looking at bonding that at $6 million over 30 years. And now we're talking about 5 million in 1 year. Reality is we can't absorb that. We can't, right? So what do we do? And we're only talking one school. We're not even talking about the other 2 schools,
right.
right? So, I mean, we talk about bonding, and sure, that kind of, in my mind, kicks the can down the road, right, and defers costs, and we're paying interest on that, all that jazz. But in year 14, 15, guess what happens again,
Gonna do it again?
right? Now I got to take out another bond, but I'm still paying the first bond.
Well, it depends if you set it up as a 10-year bond.
But you know what I mean? But yes, but that's going to be equally expensive, and we're paying a lot of interest on that.
So I think with this, what's going to be important for us to dig into all the details, right? Like I zeroed in on this graph right here because it's the rough estimate of capital needs assessment. You do see the 2 initial spikes. That first spike, if you go down a few other pages here in year 1 and the next page, and this is just still big picture stuff, but you'll see that first spike is dedicated
Page one,
to,
Brian?
this is page 39,
You don't have
38,
page
30.
numbers on the-
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it on my PDF thing, but it's about halfway through the packet. It's there. And you can see that, like, those first chunk of things at the high school, probably the most pressing is going to be roof systems and things related to the roof systems, like mechanical and electrical units connected to that, right? So whenever we start this, in an ideal world, if we were sitting on millions of dollars, we would do it this summer. But we're not sitting on millions of dollars to do it this summer, right? But that should be kind of the first swing at this building, in my opinion, is looking at the roof and then the roof units associated with it. So if we start to put away the money with that target in it, I think that's a reasonable target. You look at it, it's that about 2 million number in that graph above it. You know, project that out a few years down the road with that 3% increase, $2.4 million. That next spike in the year 4 of that bar graph, in year 4 in this graph right here, you see is around road services. Like when you dig into the detail of that, I would say, and Tina, I'll look to you to either say you're crazy or not crazy, that is not as pressing of a need. Our driveways and our road services at the high school, while the life expectancy would be about that 30-year mark, right? The actual condition of them, we've done a nice job of maintaining them. We have good plow service there that keeps care of it and stuff like that. That's not pressing of a need. We wouldn't need to do that $1 million plus right away in a second year after the roof, right? Like we have a little more time to put money away from that. I think that's the power of this and these reports that we're gathering, is it gives us a sequencing and a roadmap and like focusing on when things could be chunked together and the big picture of all that type of things. So, you know, we got to talk about how bonds, putting it away, whatever the different ways are to approaching this, but identifying with the help of professionals, what are the absolutes, like these things got to be addressed. And what are the things where we look at, okay, our driving roads and parking lots are still in pretty good shape. We can move that down a little bit further on our like big capital improvement plan and stuff.
And so if I'm hearing correct, you're factoring in for soft costs as well, with to the best of your ability. What we talk about, like when you're talking about like the engineering and stuff like that.
Some of it.
Some of it.
Engineering, where it's included, is a separate line item. Overhead, like GC costs and stuff like that, is not.
Okay.
So, labor for small ticket items like flooring, painting, that is. But like a large, you're going to hire a GC probably for the roof, and that's not included.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I heard you say, sorry, Marilyn Wade, also on the facilities committee. One of your first sentences that you read off your cheat sheet, which I kind of want to get back to, like, what did you, if you were summarizing all of this multiple page report in like 5 sentences, the elevator speech, that's, I think, what you started off with. But you said, like, the next 5 years is, I wrote down approximately 4.5 million. Is that what did I hear that correctly? Mm-hmm. Right, so, you know, Brian mentioned the first spike in that 5 years is the roof at 2.3 million, and then paving at another 1 million. I guess, so that leaves my math, another 1.2 to whatever, 1.5 million in that first 5 years, is that a lot of, are there any critical items in that chunk of the first 5-year budget, or, so we have a good idea of what is imminent in the next 5 years and what is potentially like the pavement deferrable, because you can keep pavement going with other less expensive investments.
I would say, from a building standpoint, you always want to make sure your building is secure and watertight first, and then life safety systems. So the roof, the fire alarm panel, exterior caulking, which would make the building secure and watertight, and then you can look at interior finishes and roadways and things like that.
So just looking quick, I see the boilers in year 4 in this, so I would say that, like, you group that with the surfaces, right, in that year 4, but obviously those two things can be pulled apart, right? We could prioritize the boilers
Right.
system over the roads in that situation and stuff. Yeah.
Did that answer your
Yes.
question? Okay.
I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Ames. Ms. Ames, I know it's hard to participate remotely, but do you have any questions?
No questions. I mean, I appreciate the deep dive. It's hard to wrap my head around how expensive this school is. And then the question is, if we defer maintenance, are we creating another problem for ourselves down the road? So I guess trying to understand the difference between what's deferrable and not deferrable, I'm struggling with it a little bit.
Yes and no. Some stuff is at your discretion. So, could you live with the parking lot, for example? Just continuing to patch, continuing to seal coat, continuing to do stuff like that. And instead of replacing it at 25 years, replace it at 40. Lots of places do that. New England, not so much, it's gonna get beat up in New England. But where the other big discretion is the interior finishes, things like that, painting, flooring, stuff like that. So I guess, I don't know. I guess I'm at a lawsuit.
Well, I think if I'm understanding it correctly,
No, you said it wasn't a question. I just appreciate. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. That's
Yeah.
I think my understanding of it is that they're here to basically tell us if you want to maintain a building exactly the way it should be maintained in a perfect world, this is what you should be doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, reality versus that are maybe two different things. So this is really just a roadmap to perfection, and we have to figure out how close to perfection we can actually get.
Also, the reality is, this should have been done 26 years ago. The prime time to do a capital needs assessment is during construction, because then you're looking at finishes, you're looking at construction, and you're starting to plan for things going forward. Unfortunately, a lot of places are behind the ball, and you're sort of playing catch up at this point. But one suggestion, if you build a new school or whatever, you start from ground zero and you plan going forward.
Well, that kind
So-
of leads to my next.
Maybe it might be, well, along those lines, and we don't have to jump right to LMS, but if you look at LMS, you just did a ton of work at LMS, right? So there's not many expenses until
Right.
way down the road with LMS. That's like why this was a good time to do that for LMS, right? Like, we just had that one building. You finish up all those renovations to that building, you then do your capital needs improvement, and you can really slowly start to put it away towards taking care of that. I know, I know. But like, in a perfect world, we're talking about, it's there.
Right.
So my next question, right, and it's probably a very loaded question. For similar sized towns, right, what's the average school districts put away for these types of projects? I mean,
I don't
know.
I mean, you
Not
reference
much.
Bow, right,
Yeah.
all the time, and they put away $1 million a year.
They put away $1 million a year.
How much should we be, on average, putting away in comparison to other towns?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I honestly, because I do the
But it's
report
not
and
zero.
sort of walk away, because then you get into funding and all of that, and I don't know.
And you know, I do reference Bow a lot. That's newer, right? That was them identifying that they were gonna do their elementary renovation, right? And like, hey, we don't wanna get caught in a bad spot with that down the road. The high school's starting to age out, right? Like it's 5 years ahead of Campbell essentially, right? So it was hitting its 30-year mark. 2 years ago, I think they hit it or whatever it was, right? So in identifying like, oh, we're gonna have some big ticket things. Let's start putting some money away, so.
I think what's tough with that question too, though, is that you have to then look at the big picture of each of those towns and see, okay, like, were they bonding, like, are they in disrepair? Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
this is a really
I
tricky.
mean, they were advantageous. They had the power plant there for so long that they could get a lot done financially because of it, you know?
Should we move on to LMS?
We should, yes.
Yeah.
It gets easier and then it gets harder.
Yeah, I'll take the easy one and then.
A 10-minute, 15-minute
Yeah.
conversation. And then
Star in our crown.
Okay, so this one, the total 20-year costs were about 7.7 million or $95 per gross square foot in 20-year costs. It still is kind of high. 57% of it is the architecture part of it, exterior, interior finishes. 24% site, and 18% mechanical systems. So the near-term costs here, which is gonna be a challenge, is the parking lot. And here's one that I did carry an engineering fee for. Let me get to this line here. Because I have some design background, but not enough. And I really stared at this parking lot for a while. And I don't know what the ultimate solution is, because you've got handicapped accessibility issues, you've got all sorts of issues there. So I think you need a civil engineer to get in there and give you a decent design and direct traffic flow and all of that. So this is one that I did carry an engineering fee, and then in year 3, just a base allowance, and it may be way more than this, depending on what they come up with.
How do you estimate engineering fees?
It's an hourly fee, and I figure probably a month or so of work. This one's gonna be tricky because of the stormwater issues and all of that stuff, so. So that's a near-term cost. The other thing that wasn't done during the recent renovations was the fire alarm system. So I believe the fire alarm system date is from 2007. Typically, these systems start aging out at 20 to 25 years because of mechanical, electrical, and not being able to get parts. So that's a near-term cost that's probably unanticipated, but it's monitored, it's maintained by a contract. They might tell you that they have extra parts and that you'll get 2 or 3 years out of it, but that should be on your radar here. And then the exterior here as well. The older parts, the old doors, the control joints that were not done with the renovations are in the near term. And there's some minor things like the bleachers in the gymnasium are old. There's one classroom that's very loud, so that's in the near term to try to get some soundproofing in there. But other than that, you're right, most of the costs are in the second half of the plan here. there any questions about this school?
And again, I think that reflects just like, to help the comparison, Campbell's an older building that hasn't done much of that, these bigger projects done to it because it hasn't needed it, but it's approaching that 25, 30-year mark. LMS has had a bunch of work recently done to it. So like when you compare this graph to the graph we saw at CHS and the similar graph at LMS, they're radically different, much smaller here at the beginning. But then 17, if you think the renovation project started about 3 years ago, give or take, you know, that's when you start to see that 20-year mark, some of the stuff being on people's radar again, so.
You guys do this for a lot of schools, right? When you're do you typically present to, so the board versus the exception, we lured you in?
Yep, I do a lot of Zoom calls, but just typically with one
So
person.
even based on the Zoom
Tina
call,
loves me, so she can.
we tend to, we, as a small district, we tend to, in my opinion, overload our superintendent with a million responsibilities that I'm not sure are a superintendent's responsibilities, but nonetheless, they do them here. When you're dealing with other districts, even if it's just Zoom calls, is there a person, I mean, we have a facilities director, but is there a person that's like a true point person on this, and like, what is that position, if it is? Is it a facilities director? Okay,
That's the last 3 school districts I've dealt with the facilities director.
okay. Just,
Contracts are signed by superintendent,
Sure.
and they give me the facilities number, name and number, and
And Dave was part of this process.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
He
yeah.
came with us in
he
all the
came with us,
walkthroughs.
yeah.
He was great.
yeah, I just was more
Process.
so like trying to understand like with other districts, how they do it.
And I think part of this is me being in my first year, wanting to gain all the knowledge of all these buildings, right?
I'm
I
not,
have
this is
an
not
understanding.
criticism of you. This is just, this is historically how it goes,
Yeah.
is that we have, superintendents running building projects
Yeah.
and stuff that are,
Any questions on LMS from the facilities committee?
So if I, to just sort of
Yes,
be apples to, to be apples to, so your total capital first 5 years for LMS is plus or minus a million?
million.
Largely driven by the parking lot.
Half of it's the parking lot.
Parking lot and the fire alarm system.
Okay.
And then the septic system is a big cost later on, right?
Oh boy, I can't remember. Sorry. I do 5 or 6 of these reports a month. I can't remember.
Yeah, in year 2036, you've got it. doesn't it?
Yep,
Year 12.
yep, year 12.
but the parking lot cost that you've estimated is really, what you're saying is, we don't really know what we're gonna have to do for it. So like, it's kind of just like taking a shot in the dark
So-
not necessarily a shot in the dark, but we don't know the full scope of the project, so you can't really accurately estimate that per se.
Right, so what I did was I carried our standard resurfacing costs,
Okay.
which is $350 a square foot. I carried that. Then I carried storm drain replacement. Measured out the length of your storm drains. Storm drain replacement, which is about another 137,000. And then the engineering fees. What I didn't carry, because I'm not sure, I think you're gonna end up putting in retaining walls because of the layout of the bill, and that's not in here. So that could be another 100 easily, but I don't know. And it's just one of those unknowns. I still have to go back and do final reports, so I could throw a number in if you wanted me to, like.
I
just-
think for us, it's just more important for us to know
That it
where,
might be
because as we move forward, we're trying to figure out how much of these numbers can we really actually rely on, as that's what it's going to cost us, versus how much do we have to add to. So I don't think we necessarily need you to do that.
Accessibility there is the issue, and I think you might end up taking some of that front patio away or something, because, yeah.
Any other questions on LMS? All right. The elephant in the room.
Okay. So. The elementary school totaled about 7.7 million over 20 years, or $124 per gross square foot. First 5 years totaled about 5.4 million. The year 2, year 3 numbers are pretty large here. With some things that I think you could probably defer, like wood fencing at the back of that building, or the rear fire egress patio, that could probably be deferred. But there's some pretty major systems at this building that are at or beyond standard useful lives, and you may end up with surprises eventually. You have 1972 and 1978 septic systems. Boilers, pumps, hot water systems are all beyond standard useful lives. The heating and electrical distribution systems, once you start replacing boilers, I think you're gonna end up redesigning and installing new heating distribution and electrical distribution. The fire alarm panel here is also at 20 years. Then we get into the exterior. There's older doors, windows, lintels above the windows that are rusting that need to be replaced. And when I was there, I was told about dehumidifiers throughout the entire building. And so I have carried a pretty substantial number for dehumidification units because staff sliding on the floor is probably not appropriate. So I think, and staff running around emptying dehumidifiers all summer is, so, you know, again, it's a number I put in there. Is it something that's needed? Probably, you know, it's needed, but is it, do you have to do it? No. The other thing is the interior of the 1930s building currently isn't being used. So I have carried costs on a square foot basis for interior design, remodel of that building, and the addition of an elevator to utilize that entire space. I think it's important to note that the additions of this building, that the building footprint just keeps getting bigger and bigger. You're creating more and more square footage, and you're creating more roof to be replaced. You're creating more flooring that needs to be replaced. So with every addition, the roof square footage goes up, and so you have different ages throughout the building, the different systems. This one was a tough one. This one took me a lot longer to do than I thought it would. So I'm sure that there's lots of questions. So I can stop talking about this one and you can start.
I'm just gonna listen.
So, in terms of, you know, you talked about how it makes sense to bundle certain things together. And one of the biggest questions that I think we've had as a committee is trying to analyze how much work could be done up to a certain point until you have to bring the whole building up to code. Do you guys take that into account at all when you're doing your? No. Okay.
Because the only reason why we don't is because we're a national firm.
Okay.
And every state has different thresholds, so we don't.
But conceivably, if we were to package certain amounts of stuff together, that would be something
Right.
we'd have to
You
consider.
might, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, which would mean full accessibility, which is why I put the elevator in for the 1930s building, because you would need to get full access to all floor levels there. But yeah.
Tina, having read through your report and just heard what you said, my interpretation of your cost for HVAC, electrical, windows, the boiler side of it, is that you're essentially looking to have those all replaced, essentially upgraded from what they are today. Is that kind of a fair interpretation of your assumptions?
Well, I'm saying that based on their age and standard useful lives, that they should probably be replaced.
And that's reflected in what you put in for cost.
Yeah, I can,
That's how I read your report.
let's see. So boilers are on page 42. So this building has 3 boiler rooms.
There's 2 boiler rooms and 3 boilers.
Sorry, yeah. So, yes, boiler room 2, the boilers are in year 2 and 4. Now, some of this stuff, I was aware that there is so much upfront costs here, so I tried to move some stuff out. Even though some of your items might be at standard useful life or beyond, but they're working, I tried to move some stuff, figuring that, you know, you have really, the roof is one of those costs that probably should be done soon.
Sooner than later.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, what did you say? Boilers, what else was on your list?
The boilers, the electrical system, all gets upgraded. You noted some rooms only have 1 plug in them. Essentially, the upgrade includes adding panels and electrical outlets. I think you actually have scheduled in to replace all the individual heating units in the building. There is cost in there for control system upgrades. There's cost in there for the fire and electrical
Fire.
upgrade.
Yeah.
So essentially, every system in there is included in your report, if I read it correctly. I can't think of anything that's not.
No, not every system. So what's not in the report is like hot water piping, sanitary lines,
Okay, between.
distribution systems.
Yeah.
This electrical upgrade isn't the entire building. It's the old section of the building, the 1978. It's the older classrooms. It's not the entire thing.
70s is the newer part of the building. Yeah, the 40s and 50s.
Okay, so, but you estimated where there is apparent need for an upgrade.
Yes.
Okay.
Where their teachers are controlling the heat by the thing on the pipe. That is where I put the upgrades for the heating. So, yeah. Those
Question from Mr.
classrooms.
Lassard.
Thank you. Joe Lassard. So you had mentioned that the heating and the electrical system, you put in some costs for design and everything. Were there also costs for the extra work and this that goes into redesigning it? You've redesigned the system, now you gotta install it, right? Like, do you have to cut holes in walls to run new ductwork? Do you have to run new piping, new electrical lines? Like, there's all costs associated with it. Is that built into there as well? I also have a second question.
So, let me look. I'm trying to find a good example for you. Yes and no. So there's an allowance for an engineering fee, and then there's an allowance for electrical, for example, for upgrading electrical service, running new wire and new outlets. This is based on a square footage basis of construction. The allowances for upgrading of electrical is a square footage for so it includes patching of the walls, but running chases probably not.
Okay.
So yes and no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are you in the construction
Yeah.
field? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So yeah. So minor construction, yes, but major construction, like if you had to move walls, no.
Okay. And then the second question is related to the 1930s building. Are there costs built in there for like lead paint or asbestos abatement?
No, we do not do testing for any of that.
I mean, 1930s, I'm gonna promise you there's
yeah,
asbestos and
I
lead paint there.
But the 1930s building, it is strictly on a square foot basis what I carried. Because I have no idea what you're doing in there. It was just a number to throw in the report.
There's not supposed to be any asbestos anywhere in the building except in some of the tile floor.
There's definitely asbestos in the floor.
Yes, but doesn't, according to what we've been told, the rest of it's been taken out, including 1930.
I believe it's in the gym, and we know that.
Right.
I'm not sure.
In the tile, right?
It's in tiles that you can leave
We've abated the tile.
in
There
place.
was
It's in the ceilings, I
It's
thought.
in-
It's in the
Oh, the
ceiling,
ceiling.
right?
There's some
I'm-
inaccessible ceilings in the oldest part of the building, the initial 1953 section. I can't confirm if it's there or not, I just know that that's where you don't have the suspended ceiling, you have the capped, like a,
Okay, I was thinking.
yeah,
adhered ceiling.
drywall type
Yes.
squares, so it could be.
I don't think those are.
Yeah, you need more investigation, you don't know if those
We
things
need
exist.
contingency.
Yeah, exactly, that's my point, right? Like, there needs to be some contingency in there for if you run into those things, because those things are expensive.
So we talk about like upgrading boilers and stuff like that. One thing that we've been told, I haven't looked myself, is scoped inside the cinder block walls, but we've been told that there's a belief that there's not really any insulation in the cinder block walls, and there's single layer cinder block walls. There's nothing in here to like, I mean, really, realistically, our understanding is to actually solve that problem, you would just have to build extra walls, because you really aren't going to be able to insulate those. But there's nothing to provide in that regard to increase efficiency in the building. Like, we can upgrade the systems, but the envelope itself is essentially the envelope minus changing out windows, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't carry anything. I could go in and carry an allowance per classroom to build out walls and insulate walls.
No, I just,
I mean, that
I just
would
want to
be-
make sure I understand.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
That is a big number.
Yeah. We know.
Yeah.
You gotta weigh that against what your impact is to your efficiency and your fuel costs over the next 20 years, right? Like, basically like leaving a window open all the time if you got no insulation.
Well,
Right.
this is the exact issue we had at LMS. Exact issue.
But there's always the ability to outsulate that building. There's a lot of new systems where the insulation goes on the outside, it's actually more efficient, so. And I don't know what the cost is, of course, it's not my job.
Sure.
Can I, question on windows? Did I read correctly that you assume we replace windows at least in the older section?
Sorry, let me get to that. So, yes, over a period of 3 years, phasing it in. So classrooms 1 through 10 in year 2, the 1930s building in year 2, and then the remaining windows in years 2, 3, 4. So I tried to spread it out.
The reason that's so important is if you go into those classrooms we're just talking about as far as walls go, the windows actually constitute probably 60 to 70% of the wall area.
Correct.
So replacing windows would be probably the biggest bang for the buck. And then if you did insulation of the walls at the same time, you'd have a nice classroom when you're done.
I think, but the other issue though is those particular classrooms also have the heat and the electrical issues. Those classrooms have a lot more problems than just the windows. In my opinion.
No, I agree with you. The older classrooms are really where the focus is going to be applied. So that, to me, that looks at, you're looking at tackling that as we'll call it a system approach, to do those all over the course of 3 to 4 years. Well, not even, shorter than that, probably, 2 years.
There's exterior issues on that wing of the building too, that you would have to address at the same time.
Does your report include costs and maintenance and upgrades to the portables as well, or are those left out of this?
No, they're in here.
But it doesn't include getting rid of the portables.
It does not include getting rid of them because I can't make that determination, but they're, the interior part of the portables starts on page 50, and then, let's see. Like there's one item concerning the portables that actually is in the near term is the ramp on the
Yeah,
back
we're already
one
on that.
that needs to be done soon.
Yeah, we're doing them now.
You're doing it now?
Yep.
Okay.
We have to. The health
Yeah,
inspector
the health-
said we have
yeah,
to.
that was flagged like the week before I got there.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yes, the portables are in here. The roof, they're in here.
And is there a estimated life overall of the portables, or is it something you think you can keep maintaining forever? Or is there like a time when like just the whole portable itself is done and you gotta replace it?
I think with maintenance, you can probably continue to maintain it. It's just like any other building. So it just has vinyl siding on the exterior and a roof. So I think, if you replace the roof and the windows, if the windows need it, I think you can continue to maintain it.
Okay. I'm not sure what the structure is underneath or anything like that. I don't know. Is there a block or foundation underneath?
There's
those, or
no
like a
foundation.
Trailer or something.
No, it's like a trail. Yeah, there's no foundation under those.
And then if those ever rust out or anything.
I'm pretty sure Dave goes under there with heaters in the winter, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
does.
that's what he said.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no professional, nothing to quote professionally on this, but they usually say it's about 20 years for a portable, until, now they can last longer or less, but that's about the use of it.
Right. We had those for 30.
30.
Yeah.
Those kind of buildings are normally designed for a 50-year lifespan.
Yeah.
Did you say 50 or 15?
50.
50.
What other questions on Griffin?
I think, you've given us kind of is this the 7 million over, I'm looking at.
Yes.
So the total cost, all in, for GMS, according to this report, would be, was it 7,703,000? But that doesn't fix everything that's wrong with GMS. This is to maintain it and to keep it as is, right? This is-
Again, that's not addressing walls or insulation
Right,
or.
Yeah, I guess
Wanna-
that.
I just,
carries some of the other
what my
costs.
fear would be was somebody would say, oh, $7 million, let's just do that, and then GMS is handled.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. I don't know. Not being not a builder, I don't know, and I still
Right.
haven't retained, even being in this committee.
Yeah.
What questions, when they talk about soft costs and stuff like that, I don't know what types of things are, not factored into this, just because they're not, that wouldn't be, from a project standpoint, right? For us to be able to say, this is what we need to actually go solve the
Right,
problem.
right, that's a tricky thing to decide anyway.
Right.
And there's some of those things just not built into this initial report, then like Ms. Harrison said, you're not addressing necessarily all of the things that may be a need at GMS, right? Like if you want to get rid of the portables, you need to move that space somewhere, and maybe the 1930s building does take care of some of that, but does it take care of all of it? Those are things you gotta look at and decide.
Right. I think it brings up the stuff so it functions correctly,
Yeah.
right? Like, kids are warm, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
seems like a
important, right?
small
Kids are
thing.
safe, right? Like, those are the things that we're trying to maintain with these things, right? This doesn't scratch any surface on what are the best educational needs for kids, right? Like, there are some awkward spaces at GMS, they do a great job of utilizing them, but they're just like, if you were building a brand new school, you wouldn't have that service in that space, right? But plenty of schools make do with what they have, right? That's just the nature of it. That's fine. There are plenty of schools that do that. But that's, I think that when you look at these reports, what it's doing, here is your building. Here's a big picture on the big things that keep the building operational and kids safe in it, right? That you got to maintain and keep up to snuff. And that's what these reports kind of represent. And I think the work that we still have to do is all right, I think that 7 million, I'm just speaking for myself, is your floor, right? Because you need to keep your kids safe, right? So that's the floor you're kind of working with. Now you got to figure out what you want on top of that, right? Ceilings can go forever. Like that, you could build a Taj Mahal and spend $100 million on elementary school. We're not doing that,
Yeah.
right? So what is the right balance that the community feels good about, the board feels good about, that we can do for this building? And it might be, bringing stuff up to where it needs to be, making smaller adjustments, or it might be something bigger. That's what the work that we're doing is. So.
Yeah.
But one of the points is, it's not $7 million, GMS is not $7 million now. It's $7 million over 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's a lot though. Right off the
It's
bat.
5.4 now. In five, the first 5.
Well, it's 5.4 now if you do the 1930s building. It's $4 million if you don't do the 1930s. So that's the immediate, and that's the option that you have. The beauty is, and I love that you did, and I appreciate that you did the 1930s, I think that's part of our solution. And for 2 reasons. 1930s building is 4,000 square feet, equivalent to 4 classrooms. The other thing is it restores that, which no one has assumed that we can't keep it, even if the other part of GMS is gone. So that solves the what do you do with it question as well. And it can be used for anything. It doesn't have to be classrooms. It can be used for a whole bunch of opportunities and designed any way we want.
Be the SAU?
Well, we've said that before, right? Like you see lots of other school districts where the oldest school building or part of a school building is turned into the SAU, right? Like Hudson did that with one of their old buildings.
Strategic thinking and
Yeah.
looking for the output of the FIC.
Yeah.
Right, on kind of what some of those options are.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, Ms. White?
Yeah, just a clarification, so, I mean, I did go through all the different line items at Griffin, where things needed to be replaced because they're beyond their useful life. Did you incorporate accessibility into that in considering it, or is this, does this address accessibility at all in the costs? And then the other thing is, I know the electrical system and the fire alarm system and everything is just to keep it status quo. I didn't see anything in here to add a sprinkler system in Griffin, so that's
No.
not in there. Okay, so.
That is not in there, and that's a huge number.
It's happening.
Is there a reason it was
Yeah.
left out?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Is there a reason it was left out?
Because it's not there. We don't
You're not looking at any
add,
upgrades.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everything's in kind, so it's exactly
Yeah.
the way it is now. It's
So-
not anything that could.
Yeah, if you had told me that the fire marshal in town is making you put one in, then it would be in there. But if it was a code issue or something, if you were cited, then it would be in there, but it's not,
Okay, and then the accessibility stuff is also not
not in there.
Thank you.
So I think that's a big part of the whole considerations that we gotta make, right? It's not just replacing in kind, because you gotta think about the long-term aspect of it.
I was gonna make
Yes,
that
you're-
same point, yeah.
Operating costs for the next 20 years, just putting the same thing back in, equivalent to what you would spend now putting higher efficiency systems in that would save you money in the long run, and they may last longer.
Yeah. Fair point.
Do you have any guess on what a fire
Heidi,
suppression
I see
system
you.
would be?
Heidi,
I see Heidi.
Sorry,
Peter.
sorry.
Peter first.
I'm just gonna ask if there was any idea what a fire suppression system would run in that building.
$500,000. I think that was the, well, in
I thought it
today's
was more-
dollars, I
I thought it
don't
was
know.
more than that.
I thought it, I don't know, I thought it.
I have no idea.
It's a lot.
A lot of buckets of water.
I don't know, because then you're putting in wells, it's,
Yeah, and you're running piping for 60,000+ square feet,
Yeah.
sprinkler systems, yeah. Ms. Ames?
Thank you, yeah, I just wanted to, sorry, I'm gonna feel so that's why. Going back to the conversation, I find it really intriguing how differently these reports can be applied to each school. Because what I heard for CHS was, that's the standard for perfection. That's if we were in a perfect world, where we were doing things perfectly, this is what we would do. And then for GMS, I heard it's their minimum, like this is to keep it in time to what it is. And I just want to make sure that I understand and that the average person who's hearing this understands that the information in this report is to keep the building at their current condition. Is that a fair and accurate statement? I think that's what somebody said in the audience a few minutes ago, but I want to make sure I understand that.
Yes, and I didn't do different reports. They're all the same. So
No, for sure. And again, I appreciate it. But I think you said it best, or someone said it. Looking at LMS, which recently had a pretty sizable renovation to it, this report is very useful in terms of planning maintenance for that building. For GMS, it seems like it's catch up, or there are a lot of other issues beyond just the mechanics of the building that need to be discussed. For CHS, to me, it seems like we're a little behind the eight ball on putting money aside to carefully meet their needs. Is that fair?
mm-hmm. Yeah, you're at three distinct
Different
phases
places,
in your district. Yes.
Can I just ask, kind of following on what Heidi said though, is that essentially the systems that are there now have failed or are not working anywhere near to what they should be. The HVA system being the good example. In the early editions, the electrical is insufficient for where it should be. So your estimates bring those systems up to where they should be. Is that essentially what you're looking at?
For that section of the building, yeah.
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 So the heat will be nice, will work the way it should be when we spend that money.
Well, I can't tell you that.
Well, if we have somebody engineer it to do
Yeah.
that, yes.
But I think if you hire an engineer, you're not gonna replace the boilers with what's there anyway. I think you're gonna end up doing heat pump systems with stuff on the roof. So, I've replaced it in kind, but I think ultimately what you're gonna find is that the new technology is, you're just gonna replace it with different systems, with systems that the middle school has.
No solar.
Sorry?
Maybe a little different than what the middle school has.
He said no solar.
I don't even want to talk about your solar system.
Neither do I.
All right, any other, just to wrap up Griffin and in the presentation from Tina, any other questions on Griffin tonight? All right, any other questions on on-site
I was just
insight?
going to say, I preface that, but
I did note that you actually have some maintenance costs for the solar system.
Couldn't get out.
You start replacing panels at unit 14. In fact, you have them all replaced in 5 years, I think.
no, what starts in year 14 is the inverters.
Inverters, okay.
The panels start in year 20, and actually only 2 out of the 10-year cycles are showing up in this plan because it's a 20-year plan.
What's your expected life what is the expected useful life of solar panels?
20.
And we this will come in a little later in tonight's agenda, but as a sneak preview. We met with Dynamic Grid yesterday, the superintendent, business administrator, myself, as well as Principal Grantham. And that directly aligns with what we heard from Dynamic Grid in terms of warranties, expected life, and what we also learned is some of the costs for replacement of some of these materials for solar. And I think one of the ahas, at least for me, was it's damn expensive.
They give you quotes? Did they give you
I'm
quotes for
getting them.
panels?
The
You're
panels-
getting
The
them?
panels themselves, like
The panels themselves
are
were-
not
actually
expensive.
We're not expensive.
It's the
It's
thing
all the other
underneath.
stuff.
Like I don't forget what she
Like the
called
Needs
it.
to be
inverters
fire.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
Like some of this stuff can be $8,000 to $10,000.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to hear tonight, once we get to the warrant articles, and notably the solar warrant article, we have to re-vote on the solar warrant article anyways, because there was a discrepancy in wording. We've updated the language of that warrant article for board consideration to not only include the up to language, which we were talking about,
Yeah.
but also not only to include the word, to build up the 100,000 a year, right, but also to include it as a maintenance fund to give the board the flexibility to have a fund for some of the ongoing maintenance of this solar array system. Because very clearly, we're gonna need some money set aside, long-term, to maintain this thing.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of the insight report, right? It helps you build out a maintenance plan
Yep,
that you can then start putting money aside for those future expenses.
correct. And so, on-site insight, the meeting yesterday, like, it all just, we're gonna need that, for sure. So, thank you. Any other questions? Heidi, any other questions from your side?
I'm good, thank you.
Any questions from our student reps? I know a lot of. All right, well, thank you very much.
Patience.
Great presentation. We appreciate you coming in and spending an hour and a half of your time tonight with us.
Thank you very much.
I'll walk out.
I was gonna say, touch base.
Yep. If the chair doesn't mind, I'll walk Tina
Yeah,
out.
please. With that, next on our agenda is actually keeping with the topic of facilities, moving right into a facilities update.
We haven't met since we had a board meeting last week.
Right.
We have a meeting tomorrow.
We have a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Are there any other general updates while we have the facilities
So
committee with us
we're
tonight?
working on the matrix. Yes, working on the matrix, and that's going to be the next big update. Is looking at how each of the options addresses how we think it will address various either physical issues or educational issues. So that's what tomorrow's discussion I think is mostly going to be around.
Okay, great.
Unless anyone else has anything,
Yeah, and
anyone
again,
chime
I want
in.
this to be collaborative. Any other updates from any facilities members tonight?
They're all jumping. They all wanted to be here.
Oh, I can.
Please.
Just relate to, I was gonna share it with facilities tomorrow, but we had our DOE facility walkthrough today, so I await that report from the DOE as part of the statewide accountability process that we're through this year.
Were there any, like,
No,
ahas
he was
out of
pretty
that?
tight-lipped. I couldn't even get a glance at the sheet that he was using to assess our trying to peek, but he did tell me that he delivered the report directly to Dave Ross, myself, and the superintendent. So
Okay.
I wait for that report.
All right, well,
One day.
yeah, one day. We'll be,
Same for us as well.
They did all three.
all three?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll be on the lookout for that.
So, the schools have to go through an accountability, basically audit, and it started, if you remember, at the beginning of the school year, the then, town building inspector did a walkthrough. We've had to submit curriculum things, and part of the process is also, a DOE facilities, audit inspection. So, a member from the DOE, education department, came down. Yeah, they changed the order of the words, and now it's NED, New Hampshire Education Department.
Great.
Facilities director came down and did a walkthrough of all three buildings.
What kind of stuff are they looking at? Do you know?
Don't know.
You don't know?
They looked at everything for,
We'll find
they
out.
looked at everything for us, they looked at everything from the building, like, climbed up in the ceiling, looked at what we had in different places. They walked around and they took a look at our parking lot, they took a look at our windows, they took a look at every piece of our building. And the gentleman that I spoke to today was talking about how it was for occupancy purposes, that we'll get that letter of NED saying that we are
Okay to have
allowed
students.
to be occupied for the next 5 years, based on what we,
Gotcha.
the condition of the building.
Ambitious.
Yeah, I'm really interested in Griffin.
5 years, huh? Surprise.
All right, well, thank you again for facilities. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the board meeting. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Next up on the agenda is Program of Studies approval. Am I turning this over to Dr. Taylor?
I think we're gonna, yeah.
We have Val and Jake, like we talked
Great.
about last week.
Okay.
They're just gonna present the courses that we went over last week and kind of the changes to the program of studies.
Perfect.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks. So we provided the board with the program of studies change sheet that has been provided in the past and the draft program of studies. Not many big changes this year. Our typicals, Jake's letter, we added all the new courses that y'all approved at the last board meeting. We updated some course titles, so Art of Songwriting is now called Literacy Through Music. That was probably the big one. There is one error on the change sheet. It says on page 22 we removed Honors Algebra 2. We did not remove Honors Algebra 2. We removed Honors Algebra 1. So that's an error on my end that I missed and people were freaking out about today. So I'm like, I don't know why I wrote that. And then I looked, I was like, oh, it's supposed to say Honors Algebra 1, not Honors Algebra 2. So we added all the new PE courses that were recommended by the committee, approved by the committee and approved by you, social studies courses and descriptions, the new art courses. We changed the name of crafts to artisanal designs, so it incorporates more things. We added the sports and entertainment marketing course, and then I added in the Pinkerton Academy CTE courses that are available to students. Alvern has made some changes to what they're calling some of their programs, so I'm gonna have to go in and, they just did that recently, so I have to go in and just change the names in the actual program of studies, so that's not updated in the actual program of studies right now. But the programming that they're offering is still the same, they just changed what they're calling it, so.
And I remember my first year when we did the presentation for this, we talked about having a little bit more flexibility with making changes to the program of studies, coming and asking, but then making changes after this meeting. For instance, my first year, for half the year, the letter was still from the former principal, that sort of thing. So like as we get new courses approved, or we get the updates from CTE and that sort of thing, is that something that you guys are comfortable with saying? We say, hey, we got this, can we add it into the program studies, and then it being a living document in that way from there?
I don't see an issue.
Again, no big changes,
Yeah.
shocking the world.
No,
type
especially
thing.
the things that they're talking
Yes.
about. Like the CTE, the Alvern CTE thing is a perfect example. They're gonna tweak languages. The big thing with, like you, I'm assuming this may have been, I don't know for sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why you have to change course titles sometimes is for NCAA approval, because there's certain titles they don't like, and they'll change on you what they like and don't like.
Right.
So as you submit the courses for NCAA approval, yep. Yep.
Yeah, and like Art of Songwriting, some students may have signed up thinking that they were actually going to be composing songs, not necessarily analyzing lyrics and meaning behind lyrics, so we said we needed to shift that so they don't think they're in there, actually composing
Right.
with musical notation, so that was one. And then crafts, they just wanted it to embody more like metalwork and jewelry making and kind of stuff. So they were good. Good little title change edits.
All right, so you're looking for a motion tonight?
I would love a motion because we're getting ready to roll out teacher recommendations and then get into classrooms and do course presentations and head to the middle school. So people know, so it's on the record, we have our 8th grade parent night on, the 11th of February at 6 p.m. at Campbell in the auditorium, just to go over the course selection process, what that looks like. Mr. Cutter, you'll be happy to know we're moving back to paper forms for the 8th graders this year. So we will have a paper trail of, make sure parents are seeing it and looking at it. So we are
that's in the works right now. Yeah, so that's 8th grade parent night, February 11th at 6 p.m.
I will make a motion to approve the program of studies with the flexibility to the administration to make the minor changes as needed.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Mr. Pansky, third by Ms. Harrison, fourth by Mr.
Sure.
Shoemaker. We're good. Additional discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
And Ms. Ames? You have a 5-0.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Appreciate you coming in.
Feel better, Heidi.
Thank you.
All right, I know we just met last week, but we have the student representative report again this evening. I'll turn it over to Nick and Danny.
Oh, it is snazzy tonight. Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Formatted.
Yes.
New little layout. So winter sports are going good. Boys basketball is 9-1 and have a game today against St. Thomas Aquinas. Girls basketball have a home game tonight against St. Thomas Aquinas and are 2-8. Boys hockey are now 1-6-1 and have a home game this Saturday at 7:30. Winter track has a meet at UNH on the 26th, and wrestling has a tri-meet tonight at Kearsarge.
Not much has changed since last week, but just yesterday, Student Council had a semester 1 reflection. We met from after school till about 4, just like reflecting on like what we've done as a council and our like advisor and our officers and like just seeing what we wanted to change, and we ended up getting food at the end.
There we go.
So we're still doing the acceptance cougar paws outside the den for like plans after high school. Boys basketball has their senior night on the 24th, and GMS is currently putting on their Beauty and the Beast play.
Some of the future activities we have are still our Valentine's Day activities. On the 13th of February, we're going to be doing strawberry dipping, where we give those out to students during advisory. We also sell carnations at lunch and then do the drink cart for the teachers, like most times. And then at the end of the Winter Carnival week, we have a pep rally that we do.
And just student life, just wrapping up the end of semester 1. That's at the end of the week. The start of semester 2 is the start of the next week after that. February break is the 24th to the 28th of February. And course selection for next year is starting to come up during semester 2, so.
Here we go.
Yeah, I know. Went by fast. Semester 1. Jeez.
Good. Lots of exciting things going on in the district. Thank you for the update.
That's it.
All right, that's it. Any other updates from yourself?
No. Great. Popped around. Well, spent a lot of time at the middle school today. I think I got every classroom today, correct? At the middle school?
Yeah. 2 or 3.
No, it was wonderful stuff going on instructional wise today at the middle school when we were popping around doing some temperature checks and other things. I got the sub last Thursday.
I heard.
Yeah, yeah, your daughter was in class. The kids didn't eat me up too much, so that was really nice. But yeah, the schools are going really well right now. So
awesome. Appreciate that. Moving on with our agenda tonight, we have community comment on agenda items. This is the first of 2 community comments. I'd like to open it up for the community to address the board. Mr. Peoples, name and address, please.
Greetings. Salutations from the great north.
Thank you.
Concord.
Lots happening at the State House, according to what I see online.
A lot happening. We heard 6 bills yesterday. We did do 1 bill last Thursday, which was the educational funding accounts. We started taking testimony at 1 o'clock, and we finished just a little before 6 o'clock. People for and against, as you can imagine. That hasn't come up for a work session or for a vote yet, but I'm anticipating that's going to happen pretty soon, since there is a bunch of early bills that need to be dealt with between now and the beginning of March. I I would urge you guys to go in and take a look at the bills that are there. There's 32 before us already in the House Educational Funding Committee. And I haven't even looked at the Education Policy Committee. I know that they had something to the tune of like 120, is what I heard. I didn't look at that. We heard one bill yesterday, HB 550, that would have brought the educational funding amount up to the court-ordered number for your base money. Don't know where that's going. We spent it last Monday at the DOE, or if that's what we're still calling it, Department of Education, learning about school funding in general. We started at 9 o'clock in the morning and finished about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And all I can tell you is it was a deep dive into something your superintendent has to do all the time. I hope never have to swim in that water again. I would just urge you guys to all go in to the website, take a look at the bills, and read the titles to see if any of them you think are going to impact you greatly or not. Some of the bills have start dates in them. One I looked at would be in effect April 1st, 2025, which is right around the corner. So if it gets voted, it would be almost effective immediately.
Okay.
So I just things that are kind of high notes in there. There's a bunch on school aid. There's school building aid, which is going to impact you as you move forward. There's a lot in adequacy as well. So right now there's several bills on adequacy alone, and I don't know how that's all going to play out until we hear public hearings and work sessions on them, because we haven't even seen some of them. They're still in the Legislative Service Office, so there's that 37 that's there. There's more coming. So that's all. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Like I said, I'll try to keep you informed as much as I can. Like I said, we've had those public hearings and more information coming.
Really appreciate the update.
What's that?
Which website are you talking about?
If you go onto the New Hampshire General Court website, go to Standing Committees, House Educational Funding.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a bunch of committees out there, and like I said, they divided education into two. So now there's two places. So they're trying to sort all that out. This is all new to them and us. So
Thank you for the update.
Thanks for the update. It is really nice that you come and update us. So
We have our meeting Monday from the superintendent level up in Concord, where we go over not every single bill, but like probably the most prominent or most likely to kind of, the cliff notes of it all. So
Cliff notes for. I need those too.
Well, appreciate the update, appreciate all you're doing, and thank you for the online updates as well. Those are really important.
I'll try not to make them so controversial. I have a habit of doing that, I'm afraid.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to close the first round of community comment. Move it over to correspondence. Ms. Ames, I know you're a bit under the weather. I'm not sure you had a chance to pull together correspondence tonight.
I did.
Okay, you're on top of it, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. On January 16th, in the Marauding emailed the board circulating the credit card manifest. On January 17th, Amber Carter emailed the board and business administrator, linking the board and SEC data for the budget. On January 17th, and circulated the accounts payable manifest. On January 17th, Renee Burgess emailed the board circulating the agenda. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're doing okay.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
somehow
I
we can hear
put it up
people
to
in the
90,
hallway
it didn't
better.
work, so we're good.
Okay, well, when Jan puts this in the minutes, so if anyone wants to go see our minutes after they're published, this will be right there.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
It's a magic volume button somewhere.
All right, thank you. We're good.
Okay. There were the two manifests. Then Renee emailed us the agenda on January 18th. Mr. Oblenis emailed the chair, copying the school board, requesting copies of the LEA and LSSA contracts, and those were provided by Mr. Cutter. On January 21st, Dan Sullivan emailed the board circulating the drafts, January 15th public and non-public minutes. And then today, there were various updates to those drafts that were circulated. And on January 22nd, the superintendent emailed the board asking if the board would like hard copies of the on-site insight reports for the evening.
All right, excellent.
That's all.
Thank you very much for the update. Appreciate that. Any other correspondence by the other board members? Nope. Hearing none. We'll turn it over to the superintendent for an update tonight.
Yeah, so mine's pretty brief because we've talked about a lot of stuff already. So the first thing, that first link there is just updated warrant articles. We finished the voting up from the budget hearing last week, so this is where all of them stand right now. Julie's been putting them in the
DRA portal.
yeah, the DRA portal for preview, so they can tell us that we're in good or not good shape. But we've brought this by our lawyers, so hopefully we are in good shape. And so nothing has changed on these articles as is right now. Now, the next thing in my kind of follow up, that next bullet, possible Article 9 revision. So we talked about solar. We met with Kay yesterday, as Chair Cutter alluded to or stated. So we're looking at maybe adjusting Article 9 a little bit here. So it better reflects and gives us a little more flexibility in terms of how to, oh, you can't shoot it. I gotta share this one up there. Excuse me. There we go. But you should see it on your own screen on how we can maybe utilize this fund with a little more flexibility. So we have the current article as it is. I'm just going to read what a proposed language is. This does not have to be the final language. We sent this to the attorney today to kind of get their feedback on it. Because again, we're establishing this trust fund and everything. So, shall the Litchfield School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be known as the Solar Array Fund? So that was our first adjustment, rather than call it the Solar Array Purchase Fund, to just call it the Solar Array Fund, to allow a little more flexibility in its purpose. For the purpose of accumulating funds to acquire the solar equipment at the Litchfield Middle School at the end of the 6-year agreement, and the fund maintenance and repairs of solar equipment in the Litchfield School District, and to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $100,000 to be placed in this fund, with the sum to come from June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1st of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation, and further to designate the school board as agents to expend this fund, majority vote required. So we would need to re-vote on this. This is some different language we can talk about if we want to make even further adjustments to it right here, but this is a starting point if we want to tweak it a little bit.
So either way, this will need to be revoted by the budget committee because there was a discrepancy between what we voted on as the school board and what the budget committee voted on, just with some of the wording of the article.
Yep.
So we're trying to take this as an opportunity to refine the language anyways, because it's going to be revoted anyways. So notably, just a couple of the words that you're seeing here, we added the word maintenance.
Yep.
And the language that the budget committee asked for, which is up to.
Yep.
Has been included.
I'll make a motion to recommend the amended language for Article 9.
I might pause 1 second before you recommend. Maybe we can recommend it. Maybe we can discuss
it.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shoemaker and a second by Ms. Harrison. Discussion.
One of the things that, if you don't mind me
Please.
jumping in, with the 6-year agreement, I don't know if we want to have a little more flexibility in defining of that. So one of the things kind of batting around, I put it right down here, so I'm just going to read. Maybe we could change it to something like as defined in the terms of the power of purchase agreement approved by the Litchfield School District.
Yeah,
So,
I was reading this earlier today, and I want the language to be a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
Around that, because I feel like it's just open-ended, and I want it to be referenced in the exact contract, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it should tie to the exact contract and the date of that contract.
Yeah, so if you change this to something as defined in terms of power purchase agreement approved by the Litchfield School Board on 1/4/23, the specific date you approve that contract that has this agreement in it. And in it, there are specific terms of how the purchasing goes, right? We've talked about 6 years, but actually within the contract, you have options at 6, 10, and then 25 as well.
And we've amended that contract.
And we've amended it as well. So, like you've added to it, there's the window that they weren't delivering stuff on time, so it got pushed forward. We might be looking to amend it a little bit even further. You know, we verbally got that from Kay. We got it in writing last week, verbally from Kay, yesterday, that we can get this into the next fiscal year, in terms of when that contract could start, regardless of when it is turned on, right? So if it's turned on, you know, say hypothetically March 12th, the day after voting, right? Well, we're kind of, you know, that kind of ties us a little bit, you know, but if that contract doesn't kick in until FY26, it gives us that full fiscal year.
Can you restate what you said, what your suggested language was?
Yeah, so As defined in the terms of the power purchase agreement, that's what the contract is called, approved by the Litchfield School Board on 1/4/23, January 4.
As may be amended or as amended.
As amended.
Is that the actual, I just want to confirm, because I couldn't find the actual signed contract with the date.
I have it.
Okay, perfect. As long as you have it, I'm
I
great.
brought it with me tonight. So it is signed, it was signed by the superintendent on January 9th, but there is a note specifically on it that says approved by the school board on that date, 1/4/23. And it is called power purchase agreement. I did not say the specific company you signed it with because they've changed names, and I didn't want to get into all the weeds on that type of stuff. And we're gonna send this to the attorney again, depending on how this meeting goes, if we adjust it or anything like that, so.
Yeah,
Oh, so they still have to review the language.
For this new one, yeah.
Oh, so we shouldn't even vote on it tonight then, right?
No, we should. Because our
What
next
if they,
meeting.
what if they change the language again?
Our next meeting is February 5th,
Oh, okay.
and the town deliberative is February 1st, and that is when I believe the budget committee is voting on the remaining articles for both town and school.
All right, so we're gonna vote on it, and if they have any changes to it, we have to try to.
Our deliberative session to vote on the school.
I don't
warrants.
know if they're, I know they're voting on, I don't know that. I
Yeah.
know they're voting on the police station after deliberative on February 1st.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're voting on the school article that day or after the,
Usually they wait till
School.
after deliberative in case something changes on the floor. They schedule that.
That makes
time.
sense.
Actually, last time they did not announce a meeting, so you may want to remind them to do that. They have to post for a meeting after deliberative.
All right, so I'd like to amend my motion.
I'd rather do it today if we're comfortable with that.
Yeah. No, I'm in favor.
I'd like to amend my motion to include the language that you just said with as amended at the end of it.
Could we,
So if you could just read it.
Yeah.
could we read it one more time so it's clear for the minutes?
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, so if anyone else wants to jump in here, who are smarter than me and amend any part of it,
That
go
would be
for it.
Heidi.
So do you want me to read it with that adjustment in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
The proposed language would be,
The proposed language would be, shall the Litchfield School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be known as the Solar Array Fund for the purpose of accumulating funds to acquire the solar equipment at the Litchfield Middle School as defined in the terms of the power purchase agreement approved by the Litchfield School Board on 1/4/23 as amended, and to fund maintenance and repairs of solar equipment in the Litchfield School District, and to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $100,000 to be placed in this fund, with this sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of the year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation, and further to designate the school board as agents to expend this fund. Majority vote required.
this may be nitpicky, but I might,
For it.
I might change, instead of as defined in, I might change it to in accordance with.
And you had mentioned as amended. I don't know that that makes sense.
So if it's been amended, right? So when we're making reference to the original signed
Yeah.
document, if it's been amended, we want to do it in accordance with it as it's been
As-
amended.
So that happened after the signing. It was changed after the signing.
And it may be further amended.
Okay.
Because if we don't say as amended, then we're really being authorized to comply with the terms of it prior to it being
The
amended.
original language that was
Okay.
approved, right?
Do you agree, Heidi?
I do, I just don't know if we should say as amended. What was the name of the, was it a supplemental contract? Was it an amendment? What was it called?
They just referred to it as an amendment. so-
I have it in my office. I didn't bring that one with me. I think it is an amendment. Yeah, I can look tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that makes sense to do it. I just wanna make sure it's in line with what we have called and may call in the future and subsequent changes to that contract.
That was like one of the first things you signed as superintendent,
Did I sign?
isn't it?
No, it was before me.
It was
Yeah,
before you.
yeah. I have a copy of it,
Yeah, I have all the
amended.
originals in my desk.
Spelling's not my.
Yeah.
I'm a math guy.
So you said it may be,
Wasn't me.
you said it may be amended again, potentially.
Yes, so I want to make sure we're protected against this. Like, my fear, this is my fear. This gets voted down by the voters on March 11th, right? This thing gets flipped on and we get all our storage on, say, March 15th. And then the contract clicks in there, but we don't have that additional year of funding in place for it, right? I wouldn't say it's a fear. It's not like we're like in the worst shape ever, but it just we need something out of this thing. This thing's been delayed forever and ever, right? Like, if we can at least get the assurance that we can get into our next fiscal year here, when we talk about from a budgetary standpoint, it just gives us extra buffer room to acquire the money. If we're gonna go down this road of putting it away in a fund.
It was signed by you, and it was signed July
was signed
8th
by-
at 24. It was one of the first things I had
Okay.
to sign.
It was one of the
Former
first things I signed.
superintendent Didn't sign it.
All right.
Yep, it was,
On your little wall.
micro.
Those first 2 weeks, I knew that
Micro
came-
grid schedule memorandum.
It was
But does
rapid
that say
fire.
anything about when the purchase would happen?
No. It just refers to the original power purchase agreement.
Okay, so,
That's why I was thinking as amended, I don't know if
right,
it makes
we
sense.
don't need to refer to that addendum necessarily.
Correct. Do you need to see it?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me just look at it.
Is it just a new agreement?
It was, I had asked for the amendment because all the dates were changing of this energy storage system. And I wanted more commitment from Kay on when we're getting this thing, and I just didn't want it to be loose-ended, right? Now, it turns out, this didn't mean anything anyways, because she didn't deliver on that either, so.
Brian, that should read in accordance with.
In accordance with.
So, yeah, so I guess the way that I'm reading this is that that they're clarifying the terms. They're not amending the terms. They're clarifying that this was actually the way that the contract is written. But I still think that if there's a potential for this to be amended, which, by the way, if it's going to be amended, it's going to be amended in our favor, right? Like, I just want to clarify that if people hear us talking about it being amended. So maybe instead of as amended, as may be amended. Just because we want to cover, if it gets amended, we don't want to have someone say that the warrant.
Including
article
any
didn't-
future amendments? I'm not.
You would just say
this
as
is-
may be amended.
As may be amended?
But if an addendum, it won't be an addendum if it changes material terms in the original agreement. There would be that would be an amendment.
Let the lawyers.
Yeah, there's another after.
Words
No.
mean.
Yeah.
Words are important.
Well, this doesn't matter. This one, I don't think this one matters. I don't think that we need to say as amended for this, but I think that we're hearing that it may be amended. So we would want to be able, we would want to have the warrant article cover that if it is the case. I mean, granted, it would be amended for our benefit, but nonetheless.
I think it would be an amendment to the original contract.
I would just say as may be amended.
Yeah.
Instead of maybe,
This-
but
yeah.
a word.
Again, numbers, is one thing,
All right.
not words.
Okay, so
In accordance with as may be amended. All right, take two.
All right. Would you like me to give it a shot this time?
No, I can do it. Here we
Sure?
go. Yep.
I should get hoarse.
Maybe we should have the student reps read it, you know, they can jump in. All right. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be known as the Solar Array Fund for the purchase of accumulating funds to acquire the solar equipment at the Litchfield Middle School in accordance with the terms of the power purchase agreement approved by the Litchfield School Board on 1/4/23, as may be amended, and to fund maintenance and repairs of solar equipment in the Litchfield School District, and to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $100,000 to be placed in this fund, with this sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation, and further to designate the school board as agents to expend this fund. Majority vote required.
I like it.
Okay, I amend my motion to recommend that.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Harrison. Additional discussion? Ms. Ames, you good with that?
By this language.
Okay, that's fair.
Sounds good.
All right, that's fair. All right,
Good job,
roll-
lawyers.
Roll call vote, Mr. Plansky.
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Harrison.
Aye.
And Ms. Ames. Perfect, that's 5-0.
All right, so is that our vote on this article?
That is a
Yeah.
recommendation
Okay.
by the school board 5-0.
Good.
No,
I'm
that
gonna
was
just
to,
put it in
that
here so
was
we
to
don't
approve the
forget.
amendment, wasn't it?
No, I made a motion to recommend
Oh,
it.
all right. And I seconded it. I should know that. I recommend it too.
Cool.
Okay,
There we go.
perfect.
And that's all I got.
All right, we'll turn it over to Ms. Garland for a business administration update.
All right. I also don't have much on, for this meeting, as we just met last week. I don't have any transfer requests. The only update I have is the solar, but we've already kind of talked about that.
Topic of the evening tonight.
Yes, it certainly is. So just as an update, we do have, 2 components that will be installed in the next couple of weeks. And then we did discuss the fact that when we move into the testing phase, which will happen after that, that to err on the side of caution, we would do that when there are no students in the building. So we'll do that either in an afternoon, that they'll come in, or they can do the work on the weekend.
In fairness, just on that point, again, with the 4 of us in the room talking to Kay, right? Kay did agree that the system could be turned on and activated earlier than February vacation. Kay was very confident that it could be done with the building occupied. I had reservations about that, and I said, time out. With all the issues and delays that we've had with this thing, I did not feel comfortable with that direction, and I said, after school hours, all right, weekend, February vacation, let's make sure the building has low occupancy to no occupancy when this thing is fired up. So that's why
Good call.
it might be a little bit later. Look, we waited this long, we can wait an additional week or two, right? So Kay will arrange that with the fire department, and with Eversource and with all the parties that be to make this thing operational.
Was there other discussion about timelines beyond that?
Other discussion was Kay had an action to send us, warranty information, and what else?
The warranty information was a big thing. I haven't dug through it, but she did send me a bunch of that yesterday. I don't know if
Her
you were also on the
maintenance
email.
costs, yes.
Maintenance
Yeah,
costs,
maintenance
thank
costs.
you.
Cost of solar panels and inverters.
Correct.
There's no update on the battery storage, though.
Yes.
June is what she told us yesterday.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions for Julie?
No, thank you.
Okay, I do not, okay. We will move into the minutes from January 15th. I know they were just recently tied to today's agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Do we need more time?
I reviewed them.
I did.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Motion by Mr. Shoemaker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Plansky. Discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I am an aye. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
And Ms. Ames? There, it's 5-0 as well. All right, new business. There's none listed on the agenda. Any new business to highlight?
Nope.
All right, perfect. There's old business and none listed on the agenda. Any old business?
Nope.
Perfect, love
Keep it rolling.
it. School board comments?
Oh, I just had one kind of piggybacking off of Representative Peoples. For the board, the New Hampshire School Board Association sends out a regular update of legislative bills that they're tracking. And I think they have a tracking tool on their website as well. So you can go there, and they are they're listing the bills, and you can click on links to register your testimony if you'd like.
Oh, that's great. That's
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah, it's nice to have it all in one place.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Great. The manifest has 3 signatures, and then the manifest overview from last week, January 15th, 2 items to highlight for public awareness. We had the accounts payable manifest for $341,326.17, which was board approved. as well as the credit card manifest for $30,136.67, which was also board approved. With that, we're on to our second round of community input this evening. We are now at 7:30 before our 8 o'clock time, so I will open it up to community input. All right, I see nobody running up to the mic tonight, so we'll close community input. And with that, that closes our public meeting this evening. We are going to move into non-public session under RSA 91A3, specifically under A and C. A couple items to cover off tonight in non-public. We thank everyone for joining us in public session, especially the members of FIC for joining in tonight. And with that, I will entertain a motion to move into non-public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Shoemaker, second by Mr. Plansky. Roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
And Ms. Ames? All right, we are now in non-public. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.